Hi, everyone. Tasha Sims here with
Marc Caron.
And you're listening to Conscious Living Radio. We're on Co-op Radio 100.5 FM, Wednesday night, 6 to 7 p.m. Of course, we're not invited back quite yet, hopefully soon, to the station to be recording there and doing the show live. So we're doing it on Facebook. And then, of course, you can access the show. You can still listen to the radio if you're in Vancouver. I hate the thought of radio kind of becoming obsolete. You know what I mean?
Well, do you remember that song in the 80s, how video killed the radio star?
Yeah. Well,
right?
We didn't die yet. We're still here. And we want to stay here because radio it's unique. It's a really interesting live interaction with a different frequency or vibration, I think, than when something's pre-recorded. But nevertheless, for convenience, it is, this show will also be available after on podcast on consciouslivingradio.org and also on our YouTube channel. So welcome. We are talking again about death. We've talked about death a number of times on this show. And I think for me, I love the topic because it really invites us to question living and how we do it. I don't think they can be separated anymore. So the more we talk about it, the more we talk about something that's so normal and important and is going to happen to absolutely everyone. It's like a commonality. So I love having this conversation. Our guest is Mariel Forde Clarke. She's in Ireland, which is super cool. And she's the author of a book called Where After? Where Do Our Loved Ones Go After They Die? Since her own near-death experience in 1992, she's dedicated her life to exploring the mystery of life and death. And her book, super interesting book, it invites readers not only to delve into how you view it, life after death, but also includes some interesting exercises. And for me, that's everything. I'm a very experiential person. I love getting out of my head and having an experience. And the book invites you to do that very specifically. And also a really interesting opening to grief and the whole grieving process, which we're going to talk about today, that I think invites a very healthy and integrative approach. So welcome to the show. Lovely to have you here.
It's my greatest pleasure to be here, Tasha and Marc. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's start with your personal fascination with this topic. What called you to write the book and what is its intention?
I would actually say the book has been in me for many lifetimes, and I didn't get to fulfill my sacred contract in all the other ones bar this lifetime. And I had a huge healthy curiosity about God, death and dying. And I went to a religious order, an order of mercy nuns. And anytime they would mention about a punishing God or a God that was only going to love me if I did things right, that kind of put me on a spin to say, hold on a minute here. No, the God I know loves me no matter what I do. So I used to spend more time behind the blackboard with a dunce's hat on my head because the nuns couldn't handle my questions. So then at the age of 15, I had a huge experience with Mother Mary. And that spiritual experience totally changed my life in the sense I was so young, but yet I knew there was a profound God energy within this universe that was far greater than what anybody could tell me. That apparition, that sacred connection, that experience has lived with me and in me since that day. And then as I went on and studied science, I became a serologist, and everything factual, of course, everything that could be read was factual. Everything I did was factual based on scientific equations. And then years later, when I became ill and had my near-death experience in 1992, I was so disappointed that I lived. I mean, when I woke, they said, you were so lucky and you died on the table and somebody was minding you from a higher power. But I remember just being in this energy of pure love. It was unshakable. It was peace. It was serenity. It was just bliss. I had no pain. I had no fear. I just wanted to be in it. This energy guided me then out of the darkness of what I was going through in my own personal life into the light. I became a sponge. I wanted to learn more about why did I live? Why did I not die? And I had a huge close encounter when I was younger in the lake where I used to swim. That time there was no swimming pools or anything, so you just swam in the lake. And this was a massive lake. And I got caught under a diving board. I was very boisterous. I was always very bold and just felt I was better than any of the guys. So I got caught under a diving board and I was going out of breath. I had nothing left. And the fact that I was under the diving board and under the cupboard, nobody saw that I was struggling. Nobody. And then some energy, some powerful force came and just caught me and pushed me up onto the surface of the water. And then I looked around to say thank you to whoever it was, and there was nobody there. So I've had a huge lots of those kind of encounters. So the book, whereafter, it has evolved over many, many of my decades in working with death and dying, running night classes, running workshops. So I finally, after a serious accident 4 years ago, and a ski accident which left me more or less paralyzed for months, then the universe has a way of getting my attention. So when I was more or less invalided, I couldn't walk, sure, then I had to sit and start listening to spirit and start writing the book. So that's how Whereafter came about.
So there, I totally get what you're saying, where experience is your convincer. Like this was your experience. You get to make meaning of it, and you have. But there are so many skeptics who are actually so conditioned to need evidence as opposed to anecdotal kind of stories. And there, is it even possible to bring facts and research to the table? Is there any empirical data put forth, or can there be, that indicates life continues after death?
Absolutely. There is so much data, and it's not just coming from a statistical point of view. It's coming from factual evidence that has been put forward. We can go near-death experiences and afterlife has been documented for thousands and thousands of years, going back even to Pythagoras. Pythagoras could experience all his lifetimes together, and he had vivid memories and vivid recalls of previous lifetimes. Now that's going back a long, long time. And we have the Egyptian Book of the Dead. We have the Tibetan Book of the Dead. They're all going back ancient civilizations. And Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and then later on we had Swedenborg, who I absolutely was fascinated. Swedenborg, and then even later times, as you're probably familiar with, Tasha, Descartes, they all believed in afterlife and that the soul was the most magnificent part of the human psychic. And
what was the evidence, though? Like, again, those are...
But the evidence, you see, is all the people that had near-death experiences. I could even talk about the wonderful doctors going back to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She penned the Death and Dying book many, many years ago, and she was ridiculed by her own medical peers because they said it was sheer ignorance and fantasy. Then the wonderful Dr. Raymond Moody came along, and he had all this research of his patients that had actually died. And the commonalities were the exact same as Dr. Kenneth Ring. And then it was about, being drawn into a light. It was about seeing your doctors perform life-saving resus on your body.
Right.
But then there was also the doctors themselves that had their own near-death experience. And one of them was Dr. Ivan Alexander, And Dr. Iben he was a neuroscientist, and he believed in absolutely nothing but scientific evidence. And I understood that because from my own background of science. But when he had his own near-death experience, he it took him 4 years before he could pen the book Proof of Heaven, but he had the most incredible journey on the other side, and this beautiful presence. And I understood what he was talking about because I felt my own presence coming back again. You know, the presence that guided him on the other side, that showed him the different schools of learning, the different temples of life, temples of healing, temples of sound. It was just incredible. But it is, and then we have the wonderful Dr. Penn Van Lommel, who was the cardiologist, who had so many of his patients. He spent years and years collating all the evidence of people that were pronounced dead, totally flatlined, no heartbeat, no neural signs, pulse gone, everything gone. And they all recounted these encounters they had on the other side where they were pronounced dead. And then they were being told by a loved one or some significant other, no, it's not your time. You need to go back. You have work to do. So all these commonalities are not just being plucked out of the sky. They're facts. They're there. And they're objective facts, you know. So even Carl Jung didn't believe in anything. And you would be familiar with him, Tasha. You know,
I am, but and I'm so with you. I don't really want to be a nuisance, except they're not objective. They're subjective, meaning gathering personal experiences and then going, look, this happens to so many people. And I have heard science talk about, well, when oxygen is cut off from the brain, we get visions, we get, you know, people have gone down that road to explain it scientifically. So I was being devil's advocate because I too have had experiences. I don't need science, but there are people who do. And everything we've just talked about isn't exactly science. It's still personal experiences, someone collecting them and then coming up with a commonality and going, well, so now I believe this, as opposed to, because really, I don't know if you can prove it. Didn't you in your book have some Victor Zamet who said, I'm going to give you $1 million if you can prove that it's not true. And I'm reading that going, okay, I would give you $1 million if you could prove it was true, because the word prove is the piece that I'm kind of being nitpicky about, going, it's subjective, not objective.
And the most amazing thing about this, or all of this, is, you know, yes, somebody say, prove it. But it is a very hard topic to prove, not unless you've been through the experience, right? But Dr. Victor Zamet, he's a lawyer. He has written a famous book, Lawyer Presents the Case for the Afterlife. And as you say there, Tasha, there is $1 million in a holding bank in Australia for anybody who can come between now and 2025 to disprove that it doesn't exist. Now, many have come, many skeptics have stepped forward, many scientists, many doctors, many physicists, but none of them are able to say it doesn't exist.
So then I guess it leads me to the question that perhaps this area, I mean, when we talk about the great mystery, perhaps that part of some of this is meant to remain in mystery. Perhaps we're not meant to consciously know that somewhere, I mean, certainly the heart, in my experience, doesn't need proof of much. It's an intuitive knowing, and when you experience it, your whole being goes, yes. And you just know, that kind of knowing, which maybe it's like that.
An inner knowing. It is an inner knowing, but with the same time, there is so much. There is, I mean, not everybody, not all these famous doctors that were afraid, and I go back to their evidence as well, not all of them were pure skeptics. They did not want to even put themselves out there. Like the Dr. Brian Wes, who I studied under some years ago in England, when he was teaching, you know, his workshops, he was saying, I didn't believe in any of this. He said, I was a psychiatrist, head of psychiatry in someplace in Boston. He said it took him so long before he could say this client of his, 27-year-old Catherine, who totally changed his world of afterlife and of near-death experience, of reincarnation, that his foundations of what he knew were shaken. And then it was only through his journey with this first client, Catherine, that he had to look up history books. There was no Mr. Google that time. So he had to look up the history books to see, could this terrain have happened? Could this have happened going back thousands of years ago? Could this history that she is relating through her past life regression therapy be real? To discover that all of this was there in black and white evidential evidence to say that, yes, she's speaking the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah,
and
really,
it is hard to try. I would never try and convince anybody because it is a belief system. But if it's somebody that wants to kind of enlighten themselves or awaken to the fact that, is there an afterlife? The evidence to support it is so great and it's immense. It's there.
well, reincarnation that you mentioned, that's obviously a good one because you can fact check, right? Someone has
Yes.
an experience, you can go back and go, oh, it was in Wyoming, it was the 1800s because there was this. Like you could be a detective and actually come up with some facts that
Yes.
you can check. What other areas do you feel offer evidence besides near-death experience, reincarnation, that support the whole idea of life after
I
death?
suppose after death communication is a huge one as well, Tasha. After death communication, I've had numerous encounters after death communication with, first of all, personally, I have had it with my father. I have had it with my brother who had died 6 months prior. And he appeared to me one night and he said that I needed to look after my mother, that she needed to see the doctor. And I said, well, you know me now, Joseph, you need to come to me 3 times before I take you for serious. And this same brother was extremely psychic. The same brother had a premonition of his own death. The same brother had told me 3 weeks before he passed that something was going to happen that was going to change the whole dynamics of our family. Mm. And I said to him, Joseph, what is it? And he said, I'm not quite sure yet, but I will know when it gets near the time. And at that stage, I said, how many gins have you had, right? So, and he said, no, it is going to happen. And 3 weeks later, he had an aneurysm and died suddenly. And he came to me 6 months afterwards and he had said that something needed to be done with my mom. So he came 3 times and he said, you need to get her to a doctor. So I got her to a doctor and I said, there's something wrong with her tummy. And the doctor looks at me and he says, can your mother not speak for herself? Good old Ireland, you know. Yeah. So I said, there is something wrong with her tummy. And he said, if you told me there was something wrong with her heart or her lungs, because she has smoked 60 cigarettes most of her life since she was 14 years of age. So I just burst crying and I said, there is something wrong. So he kind of took me serious then. So I stepped out and he examined my mom, came back in and he said, there's nothing wrong with her that I can find. But he said, and I started to cry again, and it takes something strong to get me to cry. And then he said, look, he said, if it's bothering you that much, he said, we'll send her for a scan. So he said, but you won't get a scan private or public for a long time. So I said, we'll go privately. So my mom didn't have private medical insurance, but I said, we'd pay. So he lifted the phone to the hospital and he said, really? Tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock. And he looks at me, perfect. I said, we'll take it. So that was on the Monday. And I was passing by the reception desk that Monday. And I said to the lady, I said, this is my mobile number if you need to ring me, because I said, I don't want my mom getting any phone calls. So with that, 3 days later, I had 7 missed calls from the doctor. They had found an aneurysm in an aortic aneurysm, AAA, and she had 24 hours to live. Oh. So we just managed to get her to the surgeon and to the vascular surgeon. And so he came to save my mother, right?
Yeah, right.
My father appeared to me when I was struggling. And when I was in a marriage, bless the lessons that I've learned from that. And I had just come out of hospital after my cancer. And I intended to just, there was no purpose, no meaning in my life, no love. And I just felt, where's the point? So I had intended to do something drastic, which was to drive my ex-husband's new car into this place in Galway where it's a pure dockland and there was no barriers at that time, but there is now. So I had intended, put my foot in the accelerator, close my eyes, and the rest is history. But just as I was leaving the house at 2 o'clock in the morning, my father, who had just died the year previous, his whole face, as I'm looking at you now, materialized on the door. And he had big hands. And he put his hand up and he had a pet name for all of us. And he said, Molly a Cudgeen. A Cudgeen is a term of endearment, keep your powder dry. So I have no idea. There are 3 hours that I have no recollection of. Because when I came round, I was sitting on the couch and I was shaking. My teeth were shaking. And I said, did that just happen? And then the following morning, I knew I had to see a solicitor. So that was my father again. And he came to me again when I was having a massive panic attack. And I saw him as clearly as I'm seeing people visibly, humans. And, you know, so I've had major encounters. I have major encounters when I'm sitting at the bedside of people that are about to transition. I will see their loved ones. I will see maybe an outline of a spirit guide, or I will see an angel, silhouette of an angel, or I will see a grandmother, or I will just see something that I know the person and the room just, it's beautiful and peaceful and sacred. And it's just an experience to behold. And it's hard to put that onto somebody and say it's real.
There are people listening who want their loved ones to appear to them, who would love nothing more. What are why would it happen for you and not someone else?
Through the course of my work, I have found that when people are grieving, there are different levels of grief and different stages of grief. And what I have found is people that are so traumatized by their grief, it's very hard for a loved one whose energy is at a much higher vibration now to come and match somebody that's so traumatized with grief. Or it could be that there is unfinished business and there is still a lot of anger, a lot of resentment there. Or it could be that the person doesn't believe that their loved one is in a place, a paradise, a heaven. So all of these kind of can block communication. Mm-hmm. But there's a beautiful exercise that I encourage some of my clients, and it is just to bring the image, if you really want to connect with your loved one. It's called a sacred heart link. And to just take a few moments, find a place that was sacred to your loved one, sit in it, make sure your phone is off. You could play some nice, gentle music without words in the background. You might, if it's your first experience to try and connect with your loved one, I always advise that maybe you might like a sweater or a cardigan or a cap or a hat or a scarf, and to just sit with that presence, or a photograph, if you had a photograph of your loved one, and bring it there, light a candle. That brings in the energy. You're setting your intention to make that connection. And what I love about the heart to heart is that you can just sit and be in your presence, and you can take a few deep breaths. And just as you breathe in, you're breathing in love. And as you breathe out, you're exhaling love. So as you're doing this a few times, your breath is creating a bridge of love and light between you and your loved one in spirit. And then you can bring their attention and an image of them to your mind. And as you're bringing them to your mind, you can visualize them. Some visualize the photographs, some just visualize what they were like now. Sometimes they can see them with a silhouette around them. And then you can just form this, it's a heart link, it's an energy exchange, because you're now in that nice, peaceful Zen mode. It won't happen if you're listening to a radio or if there is craziness going on around you. This is a beautiful, sacred pocket of love between you and your loved one. And then you can just sit with them and telepathically or just through your mind, you can ask them, you can say what's troubling you. You can even say, this is an opportunity through this connection. I'm sorry. If you need to say I'm sorry. You can say I love you if you need to say I love you. This is a kind of an opportunity between the two worlds where you can connect. There is no ego. There is just sacred connection of two hearts, one in spirit and one in the physical world connecting. And you can sit in this energy, this beautiful energy and essence for a few moments, for as long as you think it's appropriate or fitting. And then when you feel you have asked your loved one and maybe received, sometimes you can receive messages back, then it's nice to just disconnect from the energy in a very sacred, loving way. And then that you can reconnect with that energy at another stage.
Are there signs that someone's trying to connect with you that you could be looking for?
There's always signs, Tasha. This is another part that people kind of miss because they think, no, that couldn't be. I know people will say, oh, feathers, they're in God's calling cards or the angel calling cards. But there is what I have found, what I is in particular with say from my own personal experience, for my brother, when he's trying to connect with me, I will always hear Amazing Grace. Then I know it's time to listen, that he's trying to get through to me. He's trying to tell me something. But sometimes the electricity, if your loved one is trying to connect with you, especially if it's in the early stages of their transitioning, the electricity can go kind of blurry. Bulbs can go on and off. The radio can pop on. I've seen it happen. The radio can pop on for no apparent reason, nobody near it. A song can come on a radio that was very dear to your loved ones, like me with the Amazing Grace. A book can fall off a shelf. Then there are other things like they're called apports, where a coin or a symbol or a stone will just be before you for no particular reason. And that's him. Right. That's her trying to connect with me.
Yeah, I've made deals with people who are still alive, and we picked songs. So with my mom, we've got Guantanamera. With someone else, it's different. It's like, and I'm like, okay, I'll be listening for that song. So get it through.
And it's amazing, Tasha. The last 3 weeks that my brother was home visiting Ireland, he asked me to sing Amazing Grace. I used to sing many, many years ago, but I hadn't sang for years. So when he asked me to sing it, he just knelt down beside me and he started pulling my neck, as we do in Ireland. We don't take anything too serious. And so that is his calling card for me all the time.
That's cool.
But everybody has their own. Some see a butterfly. Some see a robin on the fence and say, that's Johnny, or that's Mary, or that's Eileen,
Right.
So there is beautiful signs there, but we just need to be aware of them.
So let's move in a little bit more with grief. You mentioned Kubler-Ross's work, the stages of grief. And I think most people are familiar with denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. But there's things like complicated grief or delayed grief. There are factors that make it unique to the individual. I wonder if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Complicated grief, I think, is one of the worst forms because it is a grief that holds an awful lot of guilt. One of my clients, I was working with her for a very, very long time, and I wasn't getting anywhere in her grief process or in her healing process. And it took a long time for her to eventually say that she had an affair for 2 years before her husband passed.
Right.
So this was complicating. This was a huge block to her healing. And it was only when, okay, we discussed it and we found tools for dealing with that and how she could forgive herself as well, that where he was residing now, there was no anger, there was no bitterness, that he wanted her to find her peace. So that was her complicated grief. Then there is a disenfranchised grief where, where it is, people don't realize that if you lose a baby or you have a miscarriage or you have a stillbirth or you have even loss of a limb or loss of memory, that this is a grief in itself.
Yeah.
It's all a loss.
Yeah.
And people minimize it and don't take it as serious as it should be. And all of these have a huge impact on our physical, emotional, and mental body. And it's so important that we tune into grief in all its forms. And the other part of grief, there is sometimes it's where the body has never been found. And we have huge cases here in Ireland, especially for drownings, where the bodies drift out into a sea and they will never be retrieved. And it's very hard to grieve a body when the physical body has never been brought home to mourn.
Because there's always this idea, maybe they're alive. Maybe.
And then the person cannot grieve because they're still living in hope that maybe they will turn up. And even sometimes there is, I won't even say closure, because closure is a very complicated, it has a huge negative and positive effect. But sometimes it makes it even harder then for the family or and the loved ones and the friends to grieve, because there is nothing to grieve at this moment in time, only a memory.
Right. The other thing that I seem to notice is this idea, it's not logical, but everyone I know who has lost a child, there's a sense of, if only I had. So some sort of odd regret, which, honestly, like they may have had nothing to do with, logically makes no sense, but there's some sort of a regret as the parent that they could have somehow saved that child if only they had not let them go or known about this, or, there's always some little factor. And I'm curious about the grieving process specifically for children. Is there something that that would help children cope with grief that's unique because they're kids?
I love children because they're far wiser than we give them credit for. And they're far more in tune with the spiritual aspects and the spiritual dimensions of each other and of the broader universe. They're very in tune. And sometimes I feel families or a parent, they think that they're doing the best by protecting the child, by not telling them, and they'll only give them half-truths. So if you give a child half-truths, you're automatically creating an element of distrust and doubt and an element of fear.
Right.
Children, depending on their age, depending on their level of understanding, the truth is always the best. And I have found when I deal with, especially with say young parents that are about to transition, I always encourage them, whoever is going to be the remaining partner, talk to your child, put him or her or the 3 children, put them on the couch and sit with them and just say, mommy is very, very ill right now, and mommy is not going to get better, and then there's different techniques you can find. You can ask them to draw a picture of how they're feeling. Sometimes they may not be able to articulate the words of how they're feeling, or for describing their emotions. So you can get them to draw a picture. Pictures tells 1,000 words. You can see if there's anger in it. You can see what colors they're using. It brings the story, and then you say, and then always guess wrong what's in the picture. And then you'll get them to tell you the truth of how they really feel, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the best way to bring in children. But it's so important that the child is not the forgotten griever in all of this. It's so important that the child is part of the process. And before the mom or the dad or the brother or the sister or the granddad or the grandma, it's so important that they are aware that, because they too need time. We can't rob them of their time to say goodbye, or we can't rob them of the feeling of sadness that they're going to be feeling. This is life. It's happy.
Important.
Yes. So important that they're part of that grieving process from the onset.
And, with this fear of death, people get very, very uncomfortable. Let's say someone loses a child. What's some of the really not helpful things, or inconsiderate, although they're trying to be considerate, things that people say when someone loses a child, versus what are some helpful ways to respond?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's just an Irish thing, but part of the Irish psyche would be to, and no disrespect to my Irish culture or anything like that, but, especially if the person is young and they've lost a child, and say, oh, you're young, you'll have more, or this was God's plan, or she is gone to a better place, or only God knows best, and or there are so many negative things you can say. But my kind of golden rule is, if you can't think of anything positive to say nothing at all. It's better to say, oh, well, I have no words for you right now. I'm so sorry.
But I'm here, and let me know how you need me to support you, as opposed to thinking you have to fill it in. Yeah.
Yes, I'm here for you. I'll do anything you want. Just call me. I won't impose. There is so many different people, bless them, do not know how to relate when it comes to somebody after dying.
And it's interesting in the spiritual community. So I was raised Catholic, so I know what you're talking about with that whole, you call it Irish culture. To me, it was childhood that I rejected. But in the spiritual New Age community, there's a whole other flavor of it. And it's, they probably learned the lesson they came here to learn, or like, whether that's true or not, and I want to talk about the soul and picking life lessons and this being a curriculum. I do believe that's all true. But to me, that's not helpful the moment someone has lost their child. It's not at all helpful. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I understand. I have a huge understanding of the journey of the soul. Huge, immense. It's like I'm catapulted into my soul essence, because I connect with my higher self, which is the highest aspect of my soul, and through meditation, through mantra, through prayer. And as you said there, Tasha, it is not helpful for somebody who is not awakened. And the worst thing is, even to have an understanding like I have of the soul journey, I would never even dream of saying to somebody that your child only needed to be 3 months in vitro in your womb, and that was his sacred contract complete.
Right.
And he told you as his earth mother. It is so hard to explain to somebody. Like, I have dealt with a lot of stillbirths with moms that would come to me after having stillbirth, and we would do a journey together where I would help them connect with the soul of their child that didn't make it to earth, or if the child lived for a few months or for 2 years, like I've often done, my platform for them is to help them connect with the soul of the child that has transitioned, that, for want of a better word, left too young and died too young. But that is my tool of helping them to understand, because they will be communicating with the soul of their child, not me. I will help them to connect. And it's amazing what the child will say to them when they're in that sacred space. You know, I chose you because I knew you were the best for the lessons that you are now learning. It's about the parents' lessons as well. It's not just the child.
Right.
You know?
So let's get into the soul. How do you define it? And what is its power to influence and transform lives, our lives? The soul.
Oh, that's a very simple question, Tasha.
Okay.
I am joking, of course. There was a million questions in that. The soul, to me, is the part of me that never dies. It is the part of me that resides. I'm connected through my silver cord, which is another thing we won't be talking about, obviously, because of time.
Oh, no, I thought we might, but go ahead.
Okay, but the soul is the lifeline. It is like for the want of a better analogy, it's like the baby in the womb being connected with the umbilical cord. So that keeps the baby nourished within the womb. That keeps the baby alive and all the nutrients it needs to grow within the womb and until it is birthed into Mother Earth. So when we are birthed then into Mother Earth, the umbilical cord is disengaged, but the silver cord, which is our lifeline, which is limitless, keeps us attached to the other side, keeps us connected to our soul. It's like the driving force. It drives our mind. It drives our heart to unconditional love. It drives our thinking, our thoughts. It's like it is that part of us that remains sacred. Aristotle, dare I say, Socrates, Plato, all of those believed in the soul, and that the soul was the divine part of us that never died, and it was the most important part.
And what blocks connection to the soul?
What blocks connection would be, first of all, I would say, depending on your stance in life. If you are very materialistic, if you are very much kind of ego-driven by things, by having things, instead of doing things out of love, the soul gets nourished by love. Love is the energy that creates this beautiful kaleidoscope of energy within the multi-universe. Love is what drives us. Love is what nourishes the soul. So if you're not in that loving presence of doing kindness, it's not, when we go to the other side, we're not going to be asked how many cars we had, how many holidays, or, you know, we're going to be asked, how did we look after our fellow human being? What acts of kindness did we do? And that's what, if we are too focused on ego and wanting and having and doing, where we give no nourishment to the spiritual part of us, we block the soul energy from awakening. It gets blocked.
What would you say to someone who desperately wants to feel that connection and just can't? Seems to, I mean, would use the word I can't. I try, I meditate, it feels like a concept. I love it. I want to get in touch with it. But actually, would you attribute that to a spiritual blockage or an energy blockage of some sort? Or how would you help someone directly connect with their soul?
First of all, I would have to see what their stance is in life.
Well, let's take your ego and the material out. Let's take a spiritual person who is yearning, who actually goes, yes, this makes sense. I want this, and is struggling.
The best way then, if it's somebody that's really yearning. Now, remember, if our intention is what is the most sacred, not so much the wanting, but the intention to make that connection with your soul essence. It's the intention, the power
What's
of
the
your
difference between wanting and
wanting is a
intention?
kind of it's a physical manifestation of an attachment. I want, right?
Okay.
Whereas the spiritually, your intention is to connect with the greater aspect of me or you,
Okay.
or of yourself.
All right. Yep.
And meditation is very powerful, but a lot of people are not aware how to meditate. Meditation is one of the key things to relaxing your mind, letting go of ego, just allowing the spirit, the God essence, to flood your entire being, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and to find yourself in that beautiful place of bliss. But it takes a lot of meditation. It takes years. Sometimes some people never reach that state of nirvana because of various blockages. It's not everyone can instantly connect. It takes time. It's like it's growing. It's a growing within you to reach your I am God presence. It's also very important for you to be gentle and kind with yourself. Sometimes if your desire is so great, it can put huge energy blocks in the way. And the intention would be to make that lovely connection with your soul and commune with your soul, and to allow your soul then to fill you with this pure essence.
Do you have an exercise that is designed to awaken or evolve that connection with your soul?
Absolutely. It would be like the meditation more or less earlier. It would be to set aside time each morning. Morning is always a wonderful time to connect with your soul. Set aside time in the morning or night time when you're between the two, alpha and omega. And it's so important that you just breathe with the beautiful spiritual state that is within us. Call your I am God presence to live within you, to be in you, to work with you and through you. Call it in that it is for the highest and the greatest good for you and those around you. Call in your guides. You can call in your guides or your angels or, wise ones or holy ones or ascended masters, whoever you aspire to, and ask them to do the journey with you. Ask them to remove the blocks that are maybe spiritually there, and they have the power to do it. And it's about just making that, it's like coming home to yourself. It's finding you in the presence, finding me in the presence. And when you have that established, just to continue it as a practice, like a daily practice, a nighttime practice. Nature is wonderful, to walk in nature. Swim in the sea is wonderful for connecting with your soul. It is powerful. When you're in that ocean of life, it's just amazing, the power and the energy that the water washing over you can do.
How do you think, what is the criteria that you think a soul considers when it's choosing an incarnation or a life lesson?
I would have to say the soul chooses the lessons that it hasn't mastered in the previous lifetime, predominantly.
Is there a commonality in all our lessons, in a way?
Well, there is, in the sense that, say, for instance, I'm a princess in this lifetime. Not yet.
You are, right?
Even though my previous incarnation, I could have been a pauper. I could have been poor. And we have many lessons to learn. It can be like self-love. It can be self-worthiness. It can be self-respect. It can be a myriad of other things that are simple, but yet it could be that we abused ourselves through alcohol or through drugs And in this lifetime, we have to address our addiction, be it drugs, be it alcohol, be it our own self-abuse. And there are commonalities. We always come back to address and master the lessons that we didn't master in the previous lifetime or lifetimes.
And what's the point of the big picture? Another simple question.
No, no pressure at all, Tasha.
No pressure.
The whole point is about our soul evolving to that state of divine perfection,
right?
Where we have no longer lessons to master, and then we can reside with the Godhead on the inner planes so that we can help others on the earth plane.
Would you say that?
When we have reached that self-actualization.
And would you say that, if I can use the word frequency, is love?
The most important, from what I understand and from what I continue to learn, is that love is the greatest power on earth. Even Einstein, dare I say, the wonderful Albert Einstein, he actually said, instead of the equation E equals mc squared, if we replace that with love multiplied by the speed of light squared, we would end up knowing that love was the greatest power and force in this universe.
Well, on that note, I can't think of a stronger one to begin to close up here. So where is your book? Where do our loved ones go after they die? Where is it available for our listeners?
Thank you so much, Tasha and Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure. Whereafter is available on all the Amazon sites. It's available in Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, and I'm not quite sure.
Probably on a link through our website, maybe. Who knows?
Oh,
yes, it is definitely there. It's already exists on our website.
Magic.
There's a link in the comments on the video here below as well. So it is all there.
Thank you, angels. You see the way they look after me.
Just give everyone, we've only got like 10 seconds, I'm probably a little bit over, but from your heart to everyone who's listening, who needs to hear something right now, will you trust your intuition and just deliver whatever guidance you feel whoever's listening right this moment needs to hear?
To all of you, my beloved and precious soul sisters and soul brothers, trust that the greatest power in the universe is love. And know, even if you're not feeling loved right now, that the supreme lover within the universe, creator, loves you no matter what. You are his precious child. Namaste.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us. We've been speaking to
been my
Mariel
pleasure.
Forde Clarke. Thank you. And her book
Blessings.
again, Whereafter. Where do our loved ones go after they die? And it's so much more than that, because as I say, the exercises are, I think, fantastic and profound. Thank you for joining us.
My blessings to you both, Mark and
Thank
Tasha.
you.
It's been amazing. Thank you. Bless you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.
Namaste.